Across medieval Africa, mighty empires controlled vast territories and accumulated wealth that dwarfed European kingdoms. The empires of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai controlled gold mines that supplied much of the world's precious metal, while the Kingdom of Zimbabwe built stone cities that rivaled anything in medieval Europe. These weren't primitive societies. They were sophisticated civilizations with complex governments, international trade networks, and architectural achievements that amazed foreign visitors. Welcome back to Beneath the Ruins. Today we're uncovering the hidden history of Africa's lost golden kingdoms, empires so wealthy and powerful that they controlled global trade routes and accumulated riches that made European rulers look like paupers. Their story has been deliberately obscured by centuries of colonial propaganda, but archaeological evidence is now revealing the truth about Africa's forgotten age of gold. The story begins in the 4th century AD with the Kingdom of Ghana, which despite its name was located in what is now Mali and Senegal, hundreds of miles from the modern country of Ghana. This first great West African empire controlled the gold fields of Bambouk and Bure, which produced the precious metal that would make African rulers legendary throughout the medieval world. Ghana's wealth came from its position between the gold mines of the south and the salt mines of the Sahara. Gold was essential for currency and luxury goods throughout Africa and the Mediterranean, while salt was literally vital for survival in the hot African climate. The Ghanaian kings taxed all gold and salt that passed through their territory, accumulating vast treasures that funded powerful armies and magnificent capitals. Arab geographer al-Bakri, writing in 1068 AD, described the Ghanaian capital of Kumbi Saleh as a sophisticated urban center with a population of over 100,000 people. The king's palace was surrounded by a massive stone wall, and the royal court included thousands of officials, servants, and guards. When the king held court, he appeared wearing a golden cap and necklaces, surrounded by horses adorned with gold-embroidered cloth. But Ghana was just the beginning. In the 13th century, it was conquered and absorbed by an even more powerful empire, Mali, which would become one of the largest and wealthiest empires in world history. At its peak, Mali controlled an area larger than Western Europe, stretching from the Atlantic coast to the bend of the Niger River. The founder of Mali was Sundiata Keita, whose story is preserved in one of Africa's greatest epic traditions, the Sundiata epic. According to the oral historians called griots, Sundiata united the Mandinka people and established an empire based on principles of justice and prosperity that would endure for centuries. But it was Sundiata's descendant, Mansa Musa, who made Mali truly legendary. Ruling from 1312 to 1337 AD, Mansa Musa is often cited as the wealthiest individual in human history, with an estimated fortune that would be worth over 400 billion in today's money. His wealth came from Mali's control of the Bambouk and Bure goldfields, which produced an estimated 2/3 of the world's gold supply during the medieval period. Mansa Musa's most famous achievement was his Hajj, or pilgrimage to Mecca, in 1324 to 1325. This wasn't just a religious journey, it was a demonstration of African wealth and power that shocked the Islamic world. Mansa Musa traveled with a caravan of 60,000 people, including 12,000 servants, each carrying 4 pounds of gold. The economic impact of Mansa Musa's pilgrimage was so enormous that it crashed the gold market in Egypt and disrupted trade throughout the Middle East. He gave away so much gold in Cairo that it took over a decade for the market to recover. European maps from the 14th century began depicting Mansa Musa sitting on a golden throne, acknowledging that the source of the world's gold lay in the African interior. The capital of Mali, Niani, was described by Arab travelers as one of the world's great cities, with magnificent palaces, bustling markets, and centers of learning that attracted scholars from across the Islamic world. The famous city of Timbuktu, part of the Mali Empire, became synonymous with wealth and learning, housing one of the world's first universities and a library containing hundreds of thousands of manuscripts. But Mali wasn't the only African golden kingdom. In southern Africa, the Kingdom of Zimbabwe was creating its own architectural marvels. Great Zimbabwe, the empire's capital, featured massive stone walls built without mortar that still stand today. These weren't simple fortifications. They were sophisticated urban complexes that housed thousands of people and demonstrated advanced engineering knowledge. The builders of Great Zimbabwe developed techniques for working with granite that allowed them to create walls over 30 feet high and 15 feet thick. The famous conical tower and the intricate stonework of the great enclosure required mathematical precision and architectural knowledge that rivals any medieval construction. The city controlled gold and ivory trade routes that connected the African interior to Indian Ocean ports, bringing wealth from as far away as China and India. Archaeological evidence from Great Zimbabwe shows a civilization at the height of sophistication. Excavations have revealed Chinese porcelain, Persian ceramics, and Arab coins, demonstrating trade connections that spanned the Indian Ocean. The quality of goldwork and iron tools found at the site rivals anything produced in medieval Europe or Asia. But perhaps the most remarkable discovery has been the extent of Great Zimbabwe's urban planning. The city wasn't just a random collection of buildings. It was a carefully designed urban center with distinct residential, commercial, and ceremonial areas. Water management systems channeled rainwater for storage and use. Agricultural terraces on surrounding hills produced food for the urban population. Similar stone cities were built throughout the Zimbabwe plateau, creating what archaeologists now recognize as one of Africa's most sophisticated urban civilizations. These weren't isolated settlements. They were part of an integrated economic and political system that controlled vast territories and international trade networks. The wealth of these African kingdoms was based on more than just gold. They controlled trade in ivory, copper, iron, salt, and exotic goods from across the continent. African merchants traded with partners in India, China, and the Middle East centuries before Europeans began their age of exploration. What made these kingdoms particularly remarkable was their political sophistication. The Mali Empire, for example, had a constitution called the Mandan Charter that established principles of justice, equality, and environmental protection that were centuries ahead of their time. Women had significant political rights, slavery of Africans was forbidden, and there were protections for travelers and traders. The Kingdom of Zimbabwe developed its own sophisticated political system that balanced central authority with local autonomy. Archaeological evidence suggests a complex hierarchy of settlements, with Great Zimbabwe at the apex, controlling dozens of smaller stone cities and hundreds of villages throughout the region. But then, beginning in the 15th century, these golden kingdoms began to decline. Great Zimbabwe was mysteriously abandoned around 1450 AD, its massive stone structures left empty in the African bush. The Mali Empire fragmented into smaller successor states. The wealth that had made African rulers legendary gradually shifted to other continents. What caused this decline? The answer involves a complex interaction of climate change, shifting trade routes, and external pressures that ultimately overwhelmed even these wealthy and sophisticated civilizations. Climate change played a crucial role. The 15th century brought significant drought to much of Africa, disrupting the agricultural systems that supported large urban populations. Great Zimbabwe in particular may have been abandoned because changing rainfall patterns made it impossible to support the city's population through local agriculture. At the same time, new trade routes were developing that bypassed traditional African intermediaries. Portuguese explorers began establishing direct sea routes to Asian markets, reducing demand for trans-Saharan trade that had been the foundation of West African wealth. The development of the Atlantic slave trade also disrupted traditional African societies and diverted human resources away from productive activities. The rise of new military technologies, particularly firearms, gave external powers advantages over traditional African armies. While African kingdoms had been militarily competitive for centuries, the introduction of gunpowder weapons shifted the balance of power toward societies with access to European military technology. Perhaps most importantly, the discovery of New World gold mines in the Americas flooded global markets with precious metal, reducing the relative value of African gold and undermining the economic foundation of the Golden Kingdoms. But the decline of these empires doesn't diminish their historical significance. For over a millennium, African kingdoms were among the world's wealthiest and most sophisticated civilizations. They developed their own architectural styles, political systems, and economic networks that connected Africa to the broader world. The deliberate erasure of this history during the colonial period has had lasting consequences. European colonizers claimed that Africans had never built great civilizations, using this false narrative to justify exploitation and oppression. The ruins of Great Zimbabwe were attributed to ancient Phoenicians, or Arabs, because colonizers refused to believe that Africans could have created such sophisticated architecture. Modern archaeological research is finally restoring the truth about Africa's golden age. Advanced dating techniques, satellite imagery, and careful excavation are revealing the true extent of African achievement during the medieval period. Scholars now recognize that Africa was home to some of the world's most advanced civilizations during Europe's Dark Ages. The story of Africa's lost golden kingdoms reminds us that global power and wealth have shifted dramatically throughout history. The empires that seemed permanent and invincible eventually declined, while new centers of civilization emerged elsewhere. Understanding this historical cycle helps us appreciate both the achievements of the past and the temporary nature of all human societies. What do you think caused the decline of Africa's golden kingdoms? How might history have been different if these empires had survived and thrived into the modern era? Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more stories of forgotten civilizations that challenge our assumptions about the past.